Welcome to the inaugural Women in Leadership show. Today we feature Oi-Yee Choo. She's the Chief Executive Officer of ADDX. ADDX, which was founded in 2017, is a digital securities exchange out of Singapore. Now, to tell us more, welcome to the show, Oi-Yee.
Hi, Brian. It's so nice to be with you again. It's actually been quite a long time.
Yes, it's almost been a year that you were first on the show. But for a start, give us an overview of ADDX and its history.
Sure. ADDX actually started in 2017, as you mentioned, and it was actually called iStocks at that time. And the idea behind iStocks was to democratize private market investing for individual investors. And we all know that is a pain point. We see institutional capital investing in it, but it hasn't really gone to mass affluent or retail. And in reality, because private market products are generally they have different tenors or they have different structures, and because they don't have liquidity, are generally seen as riskier investment products. But so ADDX came about building this particular platform. It uses blockchain and it sort of puts together the technology that's required to help investors give access to them to blue chip names, fractionalize their private market investing, and allow a venue for liquidity. So we are regulated here in Singapore, and we have 3 licenses. We have a recognized market operator for us to operate the exchange. We also have a couple of capital markets dealing in securities, as well as custody license within the MAS purview. So we are extremely regulated, as you would imagine, and we have a big team that ensures that the investment products that we put on our platform are appropriately approved, listed, and offered to what are accredited investors today, so high net worth individuals and above.
So essentially, that's your customer base. It's basically accredited investors as well as institutional investors.
Yes, that's right, Brian.
So you were in the show just under a year ago. You've been promoted now from COO to CEO. What's changed in ADDX since then?
Well, I think the business has developed tremendously in the last 10 months since we've met. We saw actually fund managers increasingly very happy to work with us because I think they themselves see the trend of mass affluent eventually investing in private markets. So the first aspect I would say we would have grown in breadth and in depth is actually our issuer partners. For example, Partners Group, which is a very large Swiss group that has come to us and worked on one fund, is thinking about what's the next fund to partner with us. Hamilton Lane, as well as a US-based large GP or large fund manager. And they have also worked on one fund with us and are looking to do the next 2 or 3 with us as well. So I would say the US and the global issuers are working closely with us. So that's one aspect that we have grown and developed. The second is obviously making sure that we're continually developing the tech and the platform. We have grown our team to do that. We have about over 100. Well, half of them are the engineers and product. Half of them are bankers and ex-lawyers, really bringing this to our investor base. The third piece, I guess, is markets have changed. I think tokenization has taken on a very interesting flavor, I would say, both for startups. So we see a number of these startups in the US coming up as well and in Europe. But more importantly, traditional financial institutions are sitting up. And they are very keen to see what blockchain and tokenization is going to do with them or for them. And everyone is exploring how do they optimize their own operations or grow a new market space using blockchain and obviously most importantly partnering with someone like ADDX.
So one of the things I need to ask you with all your experience, Oi-Yee, is this. Now, haven't taken the mantle of CEO now. how does the competitive landscape in fintech look like in Singapore? Because obviously, Singapore is a global leader in the fintech space, but that attracts competition. Through your lens, tell us what your lens sees.
So if I look at Singapore and MAS, and you're exactly right, MAS has been very forward thinking in its regulatory framework. And in doing so, they want to encourage financial innovation. So there are actually a very large group of fintech companies who have started up here and flourishing. Some of them are, some of them are not. Obviously, it also comes, it comes with the winners and the failures, right? And we all have to accept that this space is going to, if for innovation to really thrive, you're going to have winners and you're going to have losers. But what I think is most important is to continually keep the market framework open for new innovative ideas or new innovative companies like ourselves. Now, where competition is concerned, I think the government is also not. I think they're also quite cautious, right? They know that this space, they need to calibrate between allowing many companies in the same business model versus allowing these young companies to thrive. So I think in giving out licenses where they obviously have the biggest control point, they are very thoughtful, the regulators are very thoughtful about, what are the business models that are out there. I don't think they are keen to outcrowd the market with a specific business model. So what I see is blockchain has many, many use cases and its applicability is actually extremely wide. And even if you use blockchain to develop an exchange, there are also many different product sets that would benefit from this particular revolution, right? This blockchain revolution.
Mhm.
It could be, for example, some people are doing carbon credits. Some people focus on luxury products like whiskey or wine or whatever whatever those, or maybe cars even could potentially be tokenized as an investment product. And so I think this space will come and thrive in different niche areas as well. So, but this is blockchain piece, but also broadly, the government is encouraging traditional finance to work together with fintech companies. And I think that by itself, we have a number of multinational banks in Singapore as headquarters, and we see a deeper relationship with that as well.
Now, and those are great insights, Oi-Yee. My question is around the regulator and perhaps caution. Now, Singapore is always known to be a well-regulated market. All markets, Singapore is the gold standard in this part of the world. Has the recent challenges around the crypto space perhaps caused a slight shift in thinking with the regulators?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and perhaps I could go on all day about this, but I shall keep it quite succinct. My observation, again, this is a personal one, not obviously coming from the regulators, is they see crypto in different facets, right? One is crypto as an asset, and where retail, maybe not so much an asset, but retail investors are going in, right? They're going to exchange, they get burned by Terra Luna or they get burned by the volatility. And so MAS has taken a very cautionary stance on it. And they have come out a number of times to warn retail about putting so much investments into the crypto space because it's a very volatile asset class, right? But at the same time, they see the power of the innovation. So they actually sort of the second path, which is the part of MAS that looks at the financial innovation, is saying, well, blockchain brings about so much innovation, possibly. They don't want to ban crypto because crypto is sort of and blockchain have to sit side by side.
Mhm.
So I think their focus is on ensuring the application of blockchain without killing the innovation, and that probably means a cautious tone around crypto. I don't see a full out ban at this point, but definitely very cautious. But specifically around trading of crypto.
I want to shift the focus now to Oi-Yee, the leader. Now, first of all, you've taken a lot of different roles. You have a breadth of experience, everything from accounting, healthcare, traditional banking. So you were a UBS banker before, and now fintech. Now, you've just assumed the mantle of CEO. How has all of these different experiences in different roles and different industries shaped your leadership style?
Wow, that's a very good one for me to reflect on. I think that at the core of it is my passion for sort of corporate finance, thinking about new products. The financial piece of it, I think, is the one that's been, relatively consistent, right? How do we structure the right transaction? How do we advise clients both ways, right? Investors and issuers. So I think that's where I'm comfortable and I'm very happy. It's in my zone. But over time, when I've moved across corporate, as you mentioned, and in a bank, I've had to adapt my leadership style as well. In a corporate, there's a more sort of hierarchy around the relationships with me and my team. With banking is far more complex, right? Because you work with so many different stakeholders even within the bank. So for example, in somewhat like a UBS, we as the head of investment banking, I needed a very close relationship with the private bank, and I needed a very close relationship with the equities team who would be selling, IPOs to the institutions. So that by itself really taught me how to work with stakeholders and help everyone in a win-win situation, right? I think the second thing is also even within the investment banking team, it's a very matrixed organization, and the reporting lines are not often that clear or obvious. So, for example, it could be a sector team that reports into Hong Kong, or it could be a country team that reports into Singapore. The ability to persuade, influence, and bring everyone to the table, even if there were not a direct reporting line, is definitely a skill set that I've had to pick up. And the last thing is actually across, if I think about finance as the sort of thread, what I've had to learn is different sectors and understand, maybe not very, very deep like a specialist, but I've had to understand real estate. I've had to understand tech. I've had to understand healthcare, how to position a company, how to think about the strategy. And I think those have been very useful skill sets in sort of build the building blocks to become a CEO. Stakeholder management, strategy, sort of being agile and thinking about different aspects, and teamwork are all, I think, the key things that are very crucial.
Now, with that in mind, then, how has your previous involvement with the Civil Aviation Authority as a board member, as well as your current board position as NKF, then shaped you in a very different way?
Yes, I see, well, whether it's a bank or being on the board, a few very interesting thematics, right? One is the relationship between the board and the management team. I think that's one very important one. How does a board interact with the management team? How do I think as a board member that's different from as a CEO? So that prepared me very much for this role. The definition, where we should hold the line as management team, and if we're not a strong management team, how scope creep could come in from the board. But another thing around sort of being on the board of something like CAS is actually the appreciation of the different skill sets that a board brings together to support a company. Because, you know, when a company decides to design a board, and it's not just about diversity. Diversity is extremely important from a gender perspective. It's also very important from a competency perspective, because what you don't want is everybody in the same sector around the same age. And I think that today, even more so, you will need someone who understands digital, understands technology, understands, diversity by itself is, I think, a topic that's very interesting within the board. It's not just about gender, but also about age and experience.
No,
So
and I think, Oye, if I could just interject a little bit there, there's really been a push globally to get more women on boards.
yes.
What are some of the extra elements perhaps that a woman may bring to the table that will enhance overall board effectiveness?
I think for boards to be effective, the idea of diversity, let's just park aside gender for a moment. As I said, you cannot have the same type of person on at the board level, right? No matter how good the relationship, social or otherwise, this board might be, because there's so many variations in the world today. There's so many changes that you could be blindsided if you don't have a diversified enough board to look at that. I think gender is a very strong representation of the board's thinking around diversity, because once the chairman is forced to think about diversity, he's then forced to think, well, I need personality diversification, I need competence diversification, and skill set diversification, right? So women generally are very good at what they do. They've had to be very good at what they do to climb that corporate ladder in the first place. So when they come to a board level, be ready for a board setting, they're clearly at the top of their game, right? Because they've had to fight all their way through to the top. The second is the way that they approach and they think generally come from a softer side as well, right? So the communication, the stakeholder buy-in, there's presumably sort of the way that they influence the board is different. And sometimes in a board where you have different conversational styles, that a woman brings a different side to that. So that's the second. And the third is, I think the more that we think about international, whether it's a racial diversity or a gender diversity, I think women are best at integrating into that as well. So I think that makes the need for chairmen across the board to think about these few points seriously, not just about having that token woman on the board.
No, and one of the things that women bring to boards, I think, is that whole ability to multitask, because the woman has to be mother, wife, career woman, and then a lot of times even caregiver to the parents. So in that case, Oi, what advice would you share with women who want a career, but at the same time they have to juggle all these multiple roles?
Yeah, I think I feel sometimes like sort of multifaceted, and you kind of got to switch your costumes, your scroll like this. I think that the ability to focus where you're needed is one big thing, right? It when you sort of at home or at work, you try very hard to sort of focus when you're at work, so that when you go home, you can then sort of switch off the work hat and turn on the home hat. And it is much easier said than done. But it is when you, for example, sit at the dinner table. I'm very fortunate, I'm old enough to have kids in their teenage years. It is about that quality time, right? That conversation. It's no less about running after, a toddler, right? It's about sitting around the table and having a good conversation about what's happened in the day, right? And so that the kids feel like there is a sort of social support around the dinner table. But that also means that everyone, teenagers, adults, whoever, puts their phone away for that dedicated amount of time so that you can focus. And after that, okay, you can go back to it. But that's kind of off limits, right? So that's the focus. And then when you have to be with the family, again, with parents, you kind of got to give them that time and focus. So one is actually not so much multitasking, but to be able to switch focuses quite quickly. The second thing that's, I think, very important is self-love time. And for me, it's relatively simple. We talked about work from home, and I actually like to drive into work or drive home because that time forces me to drive away from work, right? And so that gives me that little bit of me time. I try and enforce exercise because if I'm not healthy or I'm not at the top of my game sort of physically, then it impacts not just work, but it impacts family as well.
Now, Oi-Yee, it's been a fascinating conversation. I really enjoyed this. But before you leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with?
I would like to see the world in a very different place in, let's say 5 to 10 years' time. And in reality, it's because I have two daughters that I want to see grow and flourish and want to do things that they want to do. If they want to be a CEO, they should not feel like a minority. If they want to sit on boards, they should not feel like they are the token board member. And it's so important for us to have children to build that, to build people who can be mentors, to build role models, to build the framework and the platform that they know that should they tomorrow decide they want to do astrophysics, people don't go, what, you're a girl, you shouldn't be doing
Mhm.
astrophysics. Why should they not aspire to be CEOs? So my advice is for everyone to really think very hard about what we're building for our children, and where do we see the fairness and equality that we can provide for them to be what they want to be.
Oi-Yee, I have a daughter as well, and I completely agree with you. Thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Now, we've been speaking to Oi-Yee Choo, the Chief Executive Officer of ADDX, on BizTech's Women in Leadership show. I'm Brian Fernandez. This video will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. It will also be on our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thank you very much for tuning in.